Morning. Good morning, everybody. Ralph Reed and Penny Nance, thank you for this great invitation to come back to speak here at the Faith and Freedom Coalition meeting. It is a joy to be with you all. Before I start my remarks, I'd like to pause and I know many of you are concerned with what happened in Charleston. In fact, I was traveling to campaign in Charleston day before yesterday. I got in at 11 o'clock at night and we saw the tragic story, and our hotel was literally a block away from the AME church, and it was not appropriate to continue to campaign. But it is appropriate to mourn because we know that a house of God is a house of peace and brotherhood, and the violence that took place in that church just breaks our heart. And this was an evil act of aggression. I don't know what was on the mind or the heart of the man who committed these atrocious crimes, but I do know what was in the heart of the victims. They were meeting in brotherhood and sisterhood in that church. It was Wednesday evening. They were praying. They were learning and studying the word of the Lord to find grace in His kingdom, to fill His house with love. And in times like these, in times of great national mourning, people of faith, all of us must come together and at least reflect on this and fortify our strength and love of Christ, love of God, to be able to continue to go forth. I don't know about you, but this has had a big impact on me, and I'm sure it has with you. We need to support each other. We must continue to bear witness to the truth that God acts through us, and that even in crisis, even in desperate times, we can always walk upright as brothers and sisters and look to the heavens and know that we're children of God. That gives us all strength, and I know that your hearts and prayers are with the families and with the pastor who lost their life, and let's hope it never, ever, ever happens again. I'm glad and honored to be here as a candidate for President of the United States, the greatest country on the face of the earth. Today is not going to be a political speech. I thought I would talk about a little bit more about my journey of faith and how faith has impacted my life personally and as a public servant. My life was transformed when I was 17 years old. I was in León, Mexico. Most of the older guys in the room won't understand this, although occasionally a person I can see a guy will nod their heads when I tell this story. But I saw a young woman and I fell in love at first sight. Totally head over heels in love. And she's my wife now of 41 years, Columba Garnica de Gallo at the time. Now Columba Bush is my guiding light, my soulmate, my inspiration in many ways. And it took a while for me to convince her that it was love at first sight. I finally got that done. We got married when we were 21 years old, and she was 20. And because of her, my life became organized, focused on starting my life journey a little earlier than most people did, and it's been a total blessing. I converted to the Catholic Church. Christ came into my life a little earlier, but I converted to being Catholic in honor of my wife and because I believe in the Blessed Sacraments, and they give me great comfort. On Easter Sabbath of 1995, I had lost an election in 1994, and I found incredible serenity and solace in the RCIA class to convert to being a Catholic, and it's been an organizing part of my architecture, if you will, as a person and certainly as an elected official. And so sometimes people are asked about this question about people that are aspiring to public life or people that are serving. They're asked whether you allow your decisions in government to be influenced by your faith. And whenever I hear this, I know typically the answer that they want to hear is no, never. Of course not. Gosh, I would never do that. Because in the game of political correctness, that's the answer that gets you to the next level. That's my personal experience, and it continues to this day. The end point is a certain kind of politician that we've all heard before, the guy whose moral convictions are so private, so deeply personal, that he refuses even to impose them on himself. Well, that's not me. How strange in our time today to hear that our faith and our moral traditions spoken as some kind of backwards or oppressive force when in fact it is really the moral foundation of our country, the greatest country on the face of the earth. It's also been, I think, in many ways, if we are objective about this and take a step back, the greatest force for good in the world, the greatest force that's ever been known in the world. Feeding the hungry, healing the sick, welcoming the stranger. These are the tenets of our faith. And if we act on our faith each and every day, we're going to create a more just, more loving world. The instinct to do these things didn't come from nowhere. They came from our religious traditions, and we must stand together to protect those freedoms that are so sacred and so important for a free society. When I got to be governor of the state of Florida, I insisted that we build a culture of life from beginning to end. It was one of the guiding principles of my joyous experience. It was a crazy experience, but it was certainly joyful to be governor of my beloved state of Florida. And we took special care, as that video mentioned, we took special care for the most vulnerable in our society, because I honestly believe, that as a conservative that believes in limited government, we need to put the most vulnerable in our society first, front of the line, because they're of value, they're of as much value as everybody else, and others need to take a step back. So whether it's an abused woman or a child with developmental disabilities or our child welfare system in Florida, as the most conservative, reform-minded governor in modern times, where I cut taxes, I shrunk the government, we created an environment of lots of high sustained economic growth. We eliminated affirmative action and replaced it with a model that was not discriminatory but allowed minorities to attend universities. We did all of these conservative things, but we also put the most vulnerable in society at the front of the line, guided by my faith. And we also put the rights of the unborn in the front of the line as well. When I became governor, I was shocked at the total lack of regulation of abortion clinics, and that parents had no legal role in their minor daughters' abortion decisions. So what we did was we put regulations on abortion clinics, and we narrowed the number of them, but we made sure that there was reasonable health and safety standards to protect women. I led the fight for a constitutional amendment requiring parental notice for abortions, and signed into law a bill that required 48-hour notice to a parent or guardian. At my urging, the state of Florida was the first state to sustain funding, $2 million a year, to go to crisis pregnancy centers to provide counseling and therapy. State money going to crisis pregnancy centers to give moms other choices. I signed into law a partial birth abortion ban. I helped programs to allow seniors to age with dignity, not in institutionalized cares, but wherever possible, aging at home or aging in community centers where they would get the love and respect that they deserved. We oversaw major reforms to conditions and standards in senior centers as well, partially because Miami and Florida in general is a place where a lot of seniors exist. We reflect the future of our country, though, and we better start focusing not just on the beginning of life, but the end of life issues as well in a country, and do so in a loving and compassionate way. And when I was asked to intervene on behalf of a woman who could not speak up for herself, I stood on her side. I stood on the side of Terri Schiavo and her parents. And I think that should be the first and most important instinct in this nation filled with charitable hearts, to stand on the side of the most vulnerable, the innocent. Because if we do that, if we treat people with the same dignity and respect that we believe that we should receive, we're going to solve a lot more problems than giving up that basic concept and allowing government to be the end-all and be-all. We could shut down government if we all acted on our sense of consciousness about helping others. If we restore that front and center as the guiding principle of what it is to be a successful person, and I know many people in this room do that, the demands on government would subside. We'd all be conservatives, which should be the objective, to win this fight over the long haul by creating a self-governing people again, and where we define, when we see the troubles that exist in our communities, that we act on it. Imagine a country that would be focused on that. It has been, and we need to restore that front and center in our society. My belief is that religious freedom now is under attack in ways that we've never seen before. Whether it's the Obama administration or just the general culture, it's important for us to recognize it's been a rough years for religious charities and their right of conscience in this country. There seems to be an attitude that when the prevailing government policy runs headlong into the views of the faithful must yield. I'm reminded what Senator Clinton said, that when people that have religious beliefs, they run into conflict with the women's right to choose, for example, that the people that have religious conscience have to get over it, have to take a step back. Well, in a big, diverse country, we need to make sure that we protect the right not just of having religious views, but the right of acting on those views. Religious conscience is one of the first freedoms in our country. We find a federal agency dictating to a Catholic charity, the Little Sisters of the Poor, what has to go in their health plan. And never mind the objections of conscience. I don't know about you, but I'm betting that when it comes to doing the right and good thing, the Little Sisters of the Poor know better than the regulators of the Department of Health and Human Services. From the standpoint of religious freedom, you might even say it's a choice between the Little Sisters and Big Brother, and I'm going with the sisters, and I hope you are as well. This conscience should also be respected when people of faith want to take a stand for traditional marriage. In a country like ours, we should recognize the power of a man and a woman loving their children with all their heart and soul as a good thing, as something that is positive and helpful for those children to live a successful life. And while there are people that disagree with this, we should not push aside those that do believe in traditional marriage. I, for one, believe it's important, and I think it's got to be important over the long haul, irrespective of what courts say. In America, our conscience has shown this not just at home, but beyond as well, beyond our borders. We're now living in a world where this administration particularly believes that the United States' presence in the world, its very presence, its leadership in the world is not a force for good, that it creates more problems than benefits. Imagine that. In fact, this is the first president in the post-World War II era that believes that. And the net result is we're creating insecurity and instability that we've never seen before, but we're also allowing for people of conscience outside of our country. Jews are being discriminated at higher levels, and certainly Christians around the world now are being targeted. As we pull back and we don't stand up for religious freedom, then we see what happens. Radical Islam and their adherents are now targeting Christians in places like Iraq and all throughout the Middle East. Cops being beheaded on the shores of the Mediterranean. Christian students being targeted in a university in Kenya, where the Muslim kids were allowed to go, the Christian kids were slaughtered. Over and over and over again, we're seeing this. And where is the United States? If we're going to have a strong foreign policy, yes, we need to focus on our own national security. Yes, we need to build alliances to keep us safe. But we also need to support those in the world that believe in their faith. But for us, who? Who will be there to stand by the side of someone who is courageously continuing to adhere to their faith? I believe the United States has a role to do that, and we better start doing it soon. If we get this right, if we restore the proper balance where people of faith can act on their faith, and we express our love for others by not just talking about it, but acting on it, and we create a government that is the servant, not the master of our own destiny, this is going to be the most extraordinary time to be alive. This is going to be a time of abundance. This will be a time where our children and grandchildren will have much more opportunity. If we fix how we tax, how we regulate, embrace the energy revolution, focus on the things that right now are broken, through proper leadership, if we fix these things, young people particularly are going to have a time that it'll be the greatest time to be alive in this world. We can grow far faster than we're growing today. We can create a more secure world. And in doing so, people of our generation, those, not the young people here, but their parents and grandparents, can fulfill what every generation has done since the beginning of the creation of this republic. We've always left things better for the next generation. Can we honestly say today that that's the case? We can't, but we can fix it. I honestly believe we can. With conservative principles, applying limited government, asking people to act on their heart, become a self-governing people again, this will be the most extraordinary time in America's history. I hope that you believe that. I hope that we shed the negativity that exists and that we offer a hopeful, optimistic message to people who haven't heard it in a long, long while. The politics of grievance, the politics of angst, the politics of anger is important to fight against the overreach by the progressives. But frankly, we're never going to win elections unless we inspire people to believe that the future will be bright by applying the timeless principles that we know to be true and effective. With your help, we can make that happen. I appreciate your activism. I appreciate all that you do, and I humbly ask for your vote. Thank you all very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome